they don't really need the spacing. It's more so they need the illusion of spacing. I'll say the bold claim now. If I end up being wrong, I end up being wrong. I think Philly is going to be exactly in the same spot that it was before. We're in San Antonio. Like, let's stop being like Red McCombs from coming in and being like, yeah, we got Giannis on the Spurs, and it's because Red McCombs just signed him to a sponsor deal for $50 million. But don't worry about that. That's unrelated. What's up, guys? NathanButNet, episode 97. I know it's been a hot minute. Just been very busy, especially making my indie game, which you guys can check out in the link in the description, as well as my tripod broke, so I needed to go out and get a new tripod in order to set up the camera to record properly, all that good stuff. But we're gonna go ahead and jump into it. I wanted to, again, get a podcast episode out since it's been a hot minute, but this one may be a little shorter. And we're only 3 episodes away from 100 episodes. So I definitely want to hit that milestone. So I needed to get an episode out. But with all that said, I already talked last episode a lot about recent trades with LaMelo going to the Timberwolves, Giannis going to the Heat, and so on. So we'll cover more of the more recent news. I want to talk a little bit about Summer League, talk about Klay Thompson going to the Heat, and then also the Kawhi Leonard situation. So we'll just go straight into it. With Klay Thompson going to the Heat, I talked again a lot in the last episode about how Giannis going to the Heat, it creates a lot of weird spacing issues where they can have an incredible front court where basically nobody is scoring at the rim with Giannis and Bam Adebayo, and they also have incredible finishing potential at the rim with dunking and just driving through and all that. But the problem is that whenever they traded, they got rid of Tyler Hero. They got rid of like basically all of their good guards, and now they have basically zero backcourt. And they needed a way to kind of fix that. And they went ahead and got Klay Thompson. And whenever you look at it immediately, just at a glance, it looks like a good idea because you get one of the Splash Brothers, right? And you have somebody whose name is immediately recognizable as sort of a three-point shooting threat. And I feel like that's kind of what the Heat are going for, is that at the end of the day, they don't need Klay Thompson to actually shoot threes. They just need somebody that's worthwhile enough that the defense is scared enough to guard spacing. Like, they don't really need the spacing in order to more so create. They need the illusion of spacing. However, I think a lot of teams are going to catch on to that very quickly, and I don't think that's going to work out long term because I feel like very easy into the season you be able to see through that ruse, especially if the Heat end up getting to the playoffs and becoming quote unquote contenders. I definitely don't think this makes them contenders, but let's say they go to the playoffs and they're a team to beat. I think any decent playoff coach is going to immediately know, like, hey, we need to focus on Giannis and the paint over Klay Thompson on the three. Like, teams are going to see through that very, very quickly and easily. And so that plan of the illusion of spacing is going to fall apart very quickly. Especially because Klay Thompson, he's 36 at this point. He wasn't as efficient on the Mavs. And, there's the classic joke. Klay Thompson went 0 for 10 in an elimination game. I feel like that's kind of done like irreparable damage to him. That's kind of like, I did a whole video talking about Russell Westbrook and how the Westbrook nickname almost destroyed his entire legacy. It's kind of in that same vein where like Klay Thompson is now more known for like, I won't say more known because that's a really bold claim, but it's arguable that recency bias, at least, that a lot of people remember Klay Thompson went 0 for 10 in an elimination game than they do his incredible was it third quarter game, fourth quarter game? Um like game 6 Klay. I feel like more people remember these recent bad years than his prime. And there's no getting around that he's not in his prime anymore. It's just fact. And I think again people are going to see through that very clearly. Um However, on the Mavs side of things, it basically perfectly proves my theory correctly, which is that the Mavs are going to start. I mean, I don't want to seem like it was this super crazy revelation that I predicted, because anybody like should have seen this coming, that the Mavs are rebuilding, right? And so it's not like that was a secret. So I don't want to come out here and be like, I predicted it, I saw it coming, because like 90% of people did, right? Um the thing is though, is again, we're seeing that come to fruition, where the Mavs are getting rid of a few of their older players now that they don't have Luka. They're getting rid of Klay. They're going to fully start rebuilding around Cooper Flag and whatever rookies or young players they may have. Um, and it's going to be a completely new era, because that's just the direction that they have to go in. And I also think, as I said before, that is the direction that the owners want to go in, because they want to completely remove their era from Mark Cuban's era. They want to have an identity of their ownership, and so they want to disconnect from Mark Cuban Mark Cuban's era. And so they're going to completely rebuild. And I I think this officially shows that, again, trading Luka was a failure. I mean, that's again obvious. Like everybody knew that, and it's insane that he was traded, right? Um, but again, the fact that Luka was traded, they signed Kyrie as well before they traded Luka, but they signed Klay. They got AD, traded away AD, and they got Kyrie and Klay to kind of help have shooters. And now that entire roster that they had to brag about is basically gone. And the only pieces that remain are Cooper Flag, and Kyrie, if I'm correct, is still there, but he's not going to be there much longer, I predict, because he's getting up there in age as well. Um, and so it's, I don't know. We're just seeing the complete destruction of that Mavs team even further, and it's just insane to see. But as for how much this moves the needle, I don't think it's gonna move the needle that much. I put a poll on my community tab as well about which trade do you guys think moves the needle the most this offseason. And I had Giannis to the Heat, LaMelo to the Timberwolves, Jaylen Brown to Philly, and LeBron to Philly. And I'm not surprised LeBron to Philly got the most votes, just because it's LeBron. So a lot of people are going to bandwagon that vote. I really don't think LeBron to Philly is going to make that much of an impact. And what I hate is that if Philly does end up doing well, it's going to be credited to LeBron. Um, I don't want to repeat myself too much from last podcast episodes, because I've talked about this a little bit, but that's why I fought so hard to not get LeBron on the Spurs. I've talked to a lot of people in San Antonio that are friends of mine, that they wanted LeBron on the Spurs a lot, and I was sort of in the minority that I did not want him. Just because everybody was like, he's LeBron, he's amazing, like we have all these picks, we should get him. Um, and again, my worry is that Wemby is trying to build his own legacy. The Spurs are trying to build their own legacy. And LeBron has so much media attention around him. And again, I made this whole video on this exact topic because the Cavs GM came out and quote literally said that LeBron receives none of the blame but all of the credit. And I would just hate for LeBron to come in onto the Spurs. Suddenly the Spurs win the championship when we were already in the finals last year, and the reason we won is because of LeBron. Like, I would hate that because it just gives, again, everything to LeBron rather than this young team that's accomplished so much. And that's kind of how I feel with like um vicariously, not vicariously, that's not the right word. Empathetically, like I'm not a Philly fan, but I feel for Philly that like if like Philly does well, they're gonna credit it so much to LeBron, and especially for Jaylen Brown. Like I feel I put Jaylen Brown to Philly on the same pole as LeBron to Philly, and Jaylen Brown to Philly I feel like is going to be the more impactful move, but LeBron on Philly is getting more attention when it shouldn't be. Jaylen Brown's going to have more of an impact. LeBron again is like in his 40s, and I don't know. I feel like he's just again. I've gone on record as being a LeBron hater, so people are gonna say this is just me hating, and this is a hot take. But I feel like in his age nowadays that he's going to be dragged across the finish line and get all of the credit again. Like he he's not performing, and people are gonna again throw the points per game at me and say you're wrong, he's performing just as well as he's done for so many years, but I don't think he's at the level that he's been for so long. He is starting to deteriorate. And again, you can argue points per game, but he's getting injured more easily. He's taking more time off the court. The Lakers again were doing better when he was off the floor than when he was on the floor. And they're again, I talked in that video how they're fully making the Lakers Luka's team, which is good. And it's time to move off of LeBron. And I think he is, as so many people have called out, ring chasing, which, again, I think he's done his entire career, but he didn't get called out for it until just now, surprisingly, because he's near the age where everybody thinks he should retire finally. And now, if Philly or whatever team he plays on wins a ring, like he's just getting pulled across the finish line to continue his legacy, and I think it's moronic. Um, and again, that's my LeBron rant, but that's why I don't want him on the Spurs, and why I don't think LeBron to Philly is going to move the needle that much, and more so Jaylen Brown to Philly is going to move the needle more. And I'm disappointed that LeBron is getting more credit for going to that team than Jaylen Brown is. Um, and I've seen so many people talk about how it's going to be 76ers Knicks Eastern Conference Finals, or the 76ers are going to the finals and all this. And I'll say the bold claim now. If I end up being wrong, I end up being wrong. I think Philly is going to be exactly in the same spot that it was before, where again everybody says if Embiid and the Philly stay healthy, like we do the same song and dance every year of the 76ers and the Clippers, of if the Clippers stay healthy, they're unstoppable. If the 76ers stay healthy, they're unstoppable. And it never happens. Embiid is going to somehow be injured, and Philly is going to lose in the second round again. I'll call it. And if they do make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, they're going to lose the Eastern Conference Finals, and they're not making it to the finals. I guarantee they're not making it that far. Um, and yeah. Injuries. That's where I was going with that. I had the other idea of what I wanted to talk about, which with the Wizards, Anthony Davis. I was just talking about like Embiid is somehow going to be injured. Anthony Davis as well to the Wizards. I talked a little bit about that last podcast as well, but the Wizards, they have AJ Dybantsa now. And again, I'm going to talk about it a little bit more when I get into like rookies and summer league and things like that. But um the Wizards again, the joke has been made several times that, and I've made the joke as well and made several videos on it, that the Wizards are where legacies go to die. I mean, you look at Michael Jordan, you look at Anthony Davis, you look at Trae Young. There's only been like a few people that have been able to make it out of the Wizards. Like Russell Westbrook did decently on the Wizards, which again I talked about in my Russell Westbrook video. Bradley Beal, of course, is all right. John Wall again on the Wizards is its own story and legacy, um, as it stands. But for most people and players, when you go to the Wizards, it's kind of the sign that you're out of your prime. And again, that report that came out that Anthony Davis said, "Oh, I'm going to play all 82 games." Again, is going to be memed so hard this season because I guarantee you he's out within the first 15 to 20 games. And yeah, but to kind of circle back around here, I talked about the Mavs a little bit with the Heat and how they kind of threw away their entire legacy and future and everything with Luka. And I also talked about LeBron with the Spurs. And so kind of tying that in as well, I wanted to talk about the Spurs future as well, because again, that's a huge part of my audience. That's the team I support, as you can tell. Um, and I am very proud of the Spurs for not hitting the panic button this offseason. I've talked a little bit about Tobias Harris and how I think he helps the team, but the Spurs should be an example of what you do when your team makes it to the finals. Especially because one of the reasons we lost that finals was because we were full of rookies or sophomore players or very young players where this is the first time they've been in the playoffs. This is their first NBA season in general, and they're making these mistakes versus going up against the Knicks, who's like a team full of all-stars. You have Jalen Brunson, you have Karl Anthony Towns, like they're full of all-stars that have played like 5+ seasons going up against like Carter Bryant, who this is his first NBA season. And so I'm very happy for them to not hit the panic button and just kind of run it back. Take the mistakes, lick your wounds, and go back. And that should be an example for the rest of the league of what you need to do versus what the Mavs did, which is, oh shit, we lost in the finals. Let's just destroy our entire team and completely rebuild and blow it up. And I'm very glad about that. Again, there was a lot of talks about De'Aaron Fox. I did plenty of videos on that. I'm kind of split down the middle. Um, but I'm glad that they didn't panic, trade Fox, trade everything, get Giannis for Stephon Castle or any crazy, um, like projected trades and stuff that were thrown out there. But with Summer League, I think AJ Dybantsa definitely showed why he was the number one pick, but I want to pull up my notes just so that I can get my names correctly. But I wanted to have my stats, that way I can say them correctly. So AJ Dybantsa averaged 25 points, 7 rebounds, 2.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks. And he dropped 27 points against the number 2 pick. So he played really well. The thing is, he only played 2 games, which is a very, very small sample size. And also, we see every year that somebody will go crazy in Summer League because it's Summer League and then completely drop off the face of the map. So I don't want to react like too much to it. But again, they have Trae Young, which even though I think the Wizards again are kind of washed, you can create a lot of opportunities where Trae Young can create for AJ Dybantsa rather than AJ Dybantsa having to create for himself. Again, I did talk in my sort of scouting report in the draft as and all that about um, and whenever I was making my March Madness bracket, talking about things to watch out for, that I do fear that the number one pick stuff has kind of gone to his head and ego wise, where whenever he was playing in college, he would get like triple teamed and still not pass the ball. Like he would just take contested shots or just not look for an open teammate or opportunities that were clearly there just because he felt he was the only person on the team that could score. So he definitely needs to watch for that. But I don't think he's the clear rookie of the year. I know typically like the number one pick is rookie of the year, but again, Darryn Peterson, the number two pick, he averaged 20.7 points, 4 assists, and all that as well. He played really well. He has a lot of good shot selection, good passing, and I think he can really be a good guard. And I think he might have a higher ceiling than AJ Dybantsa, so we'll see. But Cameron Boozer was the one that I really wanted to talk about. Um, because NBA.com scouting report even says that he has the most translatable to real NBA basketball. And he's 6'8" with 250 pounds. And so that's really important because we constantly see players that come in, whether it be internationally or from the draft, where they have super high ceilings, they have really good scouting reports, and so they're drafted really high, but then they kind of just fall off, or it takes them a while to get the muscle and skills they need. I mean, even with Wemby, that was the case. Wemby being a number one pick, everybody called him a unicorn, the greatest generational prospect since LeBron, all that. But he was still like skinnier, right? And he's trying to get better at his 3-point shooting, trying to develop the Dirk Nowitzki fadeaway, and Kareem skyhook, all that kind of stuff, right? So Cameron Boozer has the best ability to just kind of come in the league, where he's not averaging 20 points per game elsewhere, and then as soon as he gets in the league, he averages 5 points per game, which we see with so many other players, right? Instead, he's a lot better at you kind of just drop him in and he knows what he needs to do, or his game translates to that NBA level. And he also has like a bit of the muscle that he needs already to be efficient. He doesn't need to put on the muscle. And so I think it will be interesting to see if he ends up doing better than Darryn Peterson and AJ Dybantsa, just because he's more ready to go than the others. Um, so we'll have to see what happens with that. But the last thing I wanted to talk about is I did put out a community poll because, again, I want to include you guys on this, as I have in the past and going forward, is I put out a poll for loser of the week. So loser of the week, again, going to start including it more on the podcast because I've been forgetting about it. But the Golden Toilet Trophy, loser of the week. I put out a poll, and the options were Lakers with the Genie Bus situation, NBA handling the Kawhi situation. What else? Let me double check. I know the fourth option I just put other. And then the other one was the Mavs losing players, which I already discussed. And the overwhelming winner, as you would suspect, was NBA with the handling of the Kawhi situation. Because I talked a lot about how the NBA is going to push this under the rug and how it's going to create a slippery slope. And that's pretty much exactly what happened is the NBA let the entire season go by without any news about it. Finally, after the season's over, they say that they're going to investigate it. And then by the end of it, they claim that their investigation concluded um and they didn't find anything. And I know this is a slippery slope for fans as well to not accept the verdict, like, because that could very easily turn into like guilty until proven innocent. and they were found innocent. So you kind of have to take that as the result, whether you like it or not. Um, and again, it becomes a slippery slope where it's like, do we presume guilt even if somebody's proven innocent, which gets into like bunches of different stuff outside of basketball, and everything. And again, that can be a very, very tricky situation. But I also think that this is one of those situations where it's, the meme where it's like we investigated ourselves and found no wrongdoing. And again, I mentioned before where if the NBA let the Clippers get away with this, then so many other teams um are going to do it as well. And I fear that is where we're headed, is that um for all we know, Steve Ballmer paid the NBA money, like he paid the NBA as well as paying Kawhi to just let it go. Like, we don't know. Like, obviously that's a crazy like accusation and stuff as well, but like I wouldn't be surprised at this point, right? Because the NBA, again, I've said it nearly every episode, the NBA at the end of the day is an entertainment business. And they don't really care what's fair so much as what's entertaining. And so if whatever happens allows for more fun narratives and dynamics and things like that, they're just going to let it happen. Um and but the problem with that is that the NBA and the NBPA and like the player association, like they spent so long um basically coming up with these um the salary agreements, the player agreement, like all that, right? The second apron, all that good stuff, right? They wanted to end super teams, and they spent so long putting these agreements and terms and things like that together. And again, if they allow this sort of slippery slope to happen where one team gets away with it, then every team gets away with it, that's going to completely undermine and throw away like all of that stuff. Um, and again, I made the joke to one of my buddies about this where I was saying, like, yeah, it just means that any third party could come in and pay a huge sum of money to just like have whatever player they wanted, right? Where again, we're in San Antonio, like what's stopping like Red McCombs from coming in and being like, yeah, we got Giannis on the Spurs, and it's because Red McCombs just signed him to a sponsor deal for 50 million, but don't worry about that. That's unrelated. Like, I know that's an extreme, but you get the idea. Where it again completely throws out the idea of super teams, throws out salary caps, and again the things that have the cities that have a bigger market, it turns into the problem where the teams with bigger markets again have the more money to just get better players, right? Which is what the draft and um, the salary contract agreements, all that stuff tries to prevent, right? Is preventing the Knicks and the Lakers and other teams that have the large markets from just repeating for years after years after years because they have more money and more draw, like more pulling factors. And so for the Clippers to, again, they're proven innocent, but going on the assumption that they actually did do it, the fact that they were able to get away with it, other teams are going to think they can get away with it. And then I wouldn't be surprised if 10, 15 years from now, every team is secretly doing that. And there's some film company in Hollywood or some LA company that is offering players so much money to be part of like movies or be part of like some huge business if they play on the Lakers or the Clippers or whatever. Um, And so I guess we'll wait on see with that. But that's kind of where my head's at is I think the NBA definitely dropped the ball with the Kawhi situation. Seems like you guys kind of agree because y'all voted it loser of the week as well. But just let me know what your take is if you agree, disagree with that. Um, but with all that said, I think that's all I have for this episode, guys. I know again it may be a little bit shorter, but that's all I really have to talk about. And I just wanted to get an episode out there. And again, I'll be showing my game off at the San Japan convention in about a week during Labor Day weekend. So definitely go and check that out. And yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments with my takes. If you disagree or agree, and definitely keep up with my community tab to stay on top of loser of the week votes and things like that. And check out all the other videos, all that good stuff. And yeah, with all that said, I'll see y'all in the next one. NathanButNet 97.